Vegas knows how to celebrate. If you're headed to Vegas for your birthday, plan ahead to get all the birthday freebies the city has to offer. Just by showing your ID, you could get free cash play, scratch cards, drinks, and food at various venues on the Strip. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
College football can't allow Notre Dame to have the type of, year they have and schedule they have, and honestly put them up against other teams. Because Notre Dame looks like they're going to be a decent football team. They could lose, I think, next week to Texas A&M, Joe. Right. I don't think it's a great football team, but still a ranked team. And then run the table and still be in the playoff and absolutely beat nobody. The worst schedule they've ever seen in college football is Notre Dame this year.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Quarterback or coach has to answer for it.
Right.
Goff, Campbell. Listen, I'm not firing Dan Campbell already. I might be shipping Goff. I don't know, but I think the Lions. Again, it's week 1. Are we overreacting? I think the panic meter in Detroit is blaring. I think people are wondering, when do the Pistons start?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Happy Friday. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid ahead of another big football weekend here on the show. We got plenty to preview. College football, of course, getting started last night. More games tonight. We'll go through the weekend with Bill Bender of Sporting News. Also, Josh Graham will join us, latest in football in the state of North Carolina, and a whole lot more. And we'll also dive into the latest in Major League Baseball as we get closer to the postseason. So stick around that and, of course, a whole lot more on this edition of the show. Also, Sam McQuillan is with us from Legal Sports Report as well. Let's start off with our big sports betting story of the day. And boy, another scandal involving collegiate athletes. This is 13 former men's college basketball players from 6 schools involved in a gambling scheme that included betting on their own games. The schools included Eastern Michigan, Temple, Arizona State, New Orleans, also North Carolina A&T, and Mississippi Valley State. The NCAA has yet to name the athletes, stating that they're no longer involved or at their schools where the violations took place, and that the infraction process is still ongoing. It's, again, a third-party organization that reports these issues, and this will be a big story ahead of the next college basketball season, which is coming your way in a little bit over a month. Go figure that. Another turn in the Kawhi Leonard story. If you're unfamiliar, there was a report from Pablo Torre's podcast that reported that Kawhi Leonard received money from a defunct company. It was a no-show payment that circumvented the salary cap. That's what he reported. A limited partner with the Clippers in this next part of his reporting reportedly sent $2 million to a now bankrupt company that gave Kawhi an endorsement deal for the no-show job less than 10 days before the forward was paid $1.75 million by the company. Reportedly, the company's name is Aspiration. They agreed to pay Leonard $28 million in an endorsement deal, and the owner, Steve Ballmer, invested $50 million through his personal LLC in 2021. Of course, the story continues to evolve, and the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, says that innocent until proven guilty. So we'll see what ends up happening there. All right, in the National Football League last night, close score, but really didn't feel that way. I don't know if you watched this one, but it did feel like the Packers more or less dominated this game, and they ended up winning 27-18 as the Green Bay Packers are now 2-0 on the season. Josh Jacobs had 80 yards on the ground. Jordan Love did his thing as well, but it really was the defense that contained Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders offense. In fact, the Packers went up 14-0 in this one. Tucker Kraft, tight end. If you played him in fantasy or played against him like me, you're not feeling so good. Here's Matt LaFleur on the win.
All in all, I thought we were in control of the football game for the majority of the game. We just there was a lot of mistakes out there that we have got to clean up between penalties, some miscues, some misops. But you got to give credit to Washington. That's a really good football team. But I thought I was impressed with our defense, the energy they're playing with, getting a lot of pressure on a really good quarterback. It seemed like they were hitting them quite a bit. I know we had 4 sacks and like 8 pressures or whatever it was. I thought Keyshawn Nixon was playing his butt off out there, just competing, getting a lot of PBUs. I think he had 5. And then offensively, it was kind of feast or famine a little bit. I mean, too many 3 and outs. And then having opportunities where, for whatever reason, whether it's the call or just not executing or doing things to put us in a bad situation. But I think there's opportunities that we need to capitalize on if we want to become the team that I think we can become.
One of the favorites currently on FanDuel to win the NFC. How about that? Green Bay off to a great start. Meanwhile, the Commanders thought they had a very crowded running back room when they traded Brian Robinson to the San Francisco 49ers. Well, scratch that. Austin Eckler with a serious injury potentially yesterday to his Achilles. He may end up missing the season. We'll find that out probably, I would guess, later today to get confirmation, which doesn't leave them with much in the backfield. Here's Dan Quinn on the loss and the injury.
Just starting off, just tough night, honestly, from an injury standpoint and in game. We used the weekend to see where we're at from the injuries. I don't want to, make a guess, and so I'll give you those updates on Monday. Give credit to Green Bay. I thought they played a hell of a game. Certainly down the red zone. I thought that was the real difference for them converting into some touchdowns there, and for us only 1 trip down to the red zone. So, yeah, I thought just, getting behind, I thought that was a big piece of it. And then I thought coming out of the half, got a nice return to get going. And at that point, thought we'd get ready to go back into it. And then no score later, we're behind, but I just felt like we didn't find the rhythm, John, that we needed to. Really from Jump Street, didn't feel like our third downs, our conversions in that space were at a spot that we need them to be. Down the field, but I agreed the big plays were really the story in the game. I thought that, to me, was, down the field plays were the big difference. Like I said, I thought overall, just a tough night in terms of style and attitude of how we want to play, identity. So we just missed the mark on those, but I don't want to, I'll give the credit to Green Bay. They played well.
A couple of more injury updates. Ed Oliver of the Buffalo Bills, great defensive tackle, going to miss this week's game. And also some question for the Las Vegas Raiders, as Brock Bowers missed practice Wednesday and Thursday, which means that he'll have to practice today almost definitely in order to play this upcoming weekend. Michael Mayer is their backup there. The Miami Dolphins, after losing 33-8 to the Colts, decided it would be best to have a team meeting after week 1. How about that? Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, said he was involved in it, and it was more or less going over some of the struggles of the offense.
Well, I got the offense together, and we had a meeting about things that we wanted to do to hang our hats on this week, points of emphasis, and how we want to go about it this week. So we got all of that communicated to those guys. So that's what we got.
So you said after the game that you were definitely curious who would be showing up to film session on the off day Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Did you see the people that you wanted to see?
Yeah, no, I thought that was the cool thing is that was their process going into week 1. Win, lose, like you got to see a lot of the same guys, back in the film room, back in the meeting rooms. And, I thought that was a cool thing.
The NFL has decided they will not discipline Lamar Jackson for having that little skirmish with the fan who grabbed him at the end of the game in Buffalo. That's probably the right decision there. All right, last night in college football, Wake Forest goes up 14-0 on NC State, and then, fell apart after that. 34-24, NC State not only wins, but they cover that big line on the road. 5 games on the slate in college football tonight. Actually, some pretty good Friday night games. Indiana State, Indiana, that's not one of them, and neither is Colgate, Syracuse. But look at the rest of the schedule here. Colorado takes on Houston. Kansas State takes on Arizona, and boy, UCLA has got to win this game tonight, and they play New Mexico. They're a short favorite, 4.5. Also, Indiana's cornerback Lewis Moore's hearing has been delayed. He's going for a 6th year of eligibility, which could change the face of college football. As of right now, he's eligible to play 2 more games and then would be done with his eligibility there. All right, in Major League Baseball last night, Aaron Judge made history. He tied Joe DiMaggio for 4th place on the Yankees' all-time home run list with 360. He also passed Yogi Berra earlier this week, and the Yankees win last night 9-3. Blue Jays keep on rolling. 2-hitter for Kevin Gausman and a shutout of the Astros 6-0. Mariners also won. They're in first place. The Mets slide continues. They're just now a game and a half up for the final wild card against the Reds and the Giants. They get swept 4 games in Philadelphia. Jackson Merrill hit a home run. Randy Vasquez also pitched 6 strong innings as the Padres defeated the Rockies 2-0. Well, it's not the Rockies, but it is Rocky Top. Boy, that's a horrible pun, but we'll do that next. Tennessee, Georgia preview coming up with Bill Bender from Sport News.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Remember these names: AZ Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes what. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with, obviously, Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I was looking at through my phone at first. I'm like, why is there such a delay? And why are we getting pitch hitters right away? Oh, the pitcher got thrown out for some reason. Maybe he hurt himself. But no, turning out and seeing a brawl was absolutely hilarious to let that one play out. Just the way it is sometimes in baseball. We don't get a lot of good fights and a lot of good brawls and anger, specifically from 2 teams that aren't going to the playoffs. So good on them for showing that moxie last time. But it's good to see a little bit of a brawl and a little bit of that passion here.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
If a game is on the line,
give me the Navy kicker.
Oh,
the guy's going into battle in 2 weeks. He can't make an extra point. Come on.
From a mindset perspective, yeah. I'm not. Listen, we thanked them for their service. I love them. Okay.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, if you have a bet and you have an academy kicker with a field goal or an extra point, you got to hold your breath.
27 yards. You know,
27 yards. The kid shanked it from like 30.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
All right, welcome back. College football weekend up ahead. We do have some more key games this weekend, so let's break them all down with Bill Bender on Sporting News. Bill, great to have you back here on NewsWire to preview it all. Let's start off with the Southeastern Conference, and boy, Georgia has just dominated this series against Tennessee, whether it's been home or on the road. I mean, I don't think Tennessee's covered a game in like 5 years against them either, but maybe this is their best shot, Bill. 4.5-point home dogs at Rocky Top with a total of 49.5 in this game. Can Tennessee just keep this thing close? Georgia has not looked great, Bill, thus far.
A staggering statistic is that Georgia has gone into Tennessee in the last 4 meetings at Neyland and won by an average of 30.5 points per game. I mean, and I'm wondering if they're kind of luring us in here. That line has certainly dropped. Gunnar Stockton hasn't thrown the ball down the field much, only 10 passes of 10 yards or more in the first 2 weeks. So are they kind of lulling us to sleep? And Joey Aguilar's looked fantastic. We had a feature about him at Sporting News this week. Are they a team that can finally get it done? I still pick Georgia to win, but I'm really nervous about this one. I do think this could be one of those times where Josh Heupel, 2-2 against Florida, 2-2 against Alabama. Can he actually go get it done against Georgia?
Well, Aguilar has been fantastic. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 61% completion percentage to go along with 535 passing yards. And folks have only played a couple of games. So that's obviously very impressive. Okay, Bill. So we talked last week about the Gators against South Florida. That game I was a little suspicious of. I got to tell you, this week, I think the Gators are going to show up. I don't know that they're going to win the game. This is probably the toughest assignment in all of college football, having to go to, I mean, I think this is the real Death Valley, by the way, in LSU. Yeah. But LSU, even after what happened last week, Bill, the line is telling you the story. It's only 7.5. The total has jumped down here. Wow, 46.5. So I don't know. I just expect a close game. This feels like the same blueprint of the Gators last season.
And a history, as you know, in this game where weird things happen. You know, somebody might throw a shoe at somebody. That happened 5 years ago, I believe. It is it's a back against the wall moment for Florida. You know, early in the week, I was picking on DJ Lagway a little bit. And then I went in, kind of broke down his numbers. He's playing well. But I think they've got to do the things within the play calling to put him in positions to succeed, not get him in 3rd and longs, not in Death Valley. And it is the real Death Valley, as you know. I do think they can hang around, keep it within a touchdown. And if they can get into the 4th quarter, I mean, LSU, the key for Florida's defense, just continue to shut down that running game. If LSU can't get going on the ground, and they had a little trouble with that against Louisiana Tech last week, then the Gators might have a chance to pull something off here. But you got to have this one. The other end of this is, are they feeling sorry for themselves? They do play 3 straight top 10 opponents. Are the toxic levels high? We're going to find out, and I'm going to take your word for it, Craig. We're going to find out what Florida's all about.
Yeah, I do think they'll cover. I don't know that they'll win, but either way, a loss, you're right, that kind of ends their season. Okay, so Notre Dame is back at it. They're 6.5-point favorites against Texas A&M with a total of 49.5. At first glance, you're like, wait a second here. Why is Notre Dame a touchdown favorite facing off against a team inside the top 20? But truth be told, Bill, I do think Notre Dame is the better team here. And I do think that they'll respond too. I think maybe a little bit of an overreaction to that game against Miami where they easily could have won, but can they cover this number? I think that's probably the bigger question.
Yeah, and CJ Carr had 2 weeks to kind of digest what happened at Miami. Jeremiah Love needs more carries. I think we all agree on that. And how does Texas A&M respond to being on the road? You know, Notre Dame handled the emotions of this game last year, won by 10 points. All that said, Marcel Reed's playing very well for Texas A&M. Hasn't turned the ball over, has over 100 yards rushing, that dual threat mix that could make him a Heisman sleeper if they win this game. But I like Notre Dame too. I think they bounce back. That defense shows up. They maybe come up with a couple turnovers. And, of course, that tag team of Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love get it done between the tackles. Notre Dame wins this game and covers.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. Okay, so no respect for South Florida, even after 2 impressive weeks here. The Hurricanes are 17.5-point favorites here, total of 56.5. And so basically, it appears as though the odds makers think that Miami was exactly who Florida was a week ago, because they haven't really adjusted the line here at all. The line last week was -18. I do like the way that South Florida played last week, Bill, but like some games in college football, I think you're going to know the result of this in the very early part of the game, first half. If USF is in this one even at all, I think they have a chance to win. But you could also see Miami, putting the 50 spot up. Which one do you think happens here?
Which is what they did last year. And Carson Beck hasn't turned the ball over. I think I'm going to take South Florida to cover. Some of the magic's worn off. I get that. You're not going to sneak up on Miami, and their front 7 on defense is really good. The linebackers are excellent. So can they hold up in the trenches against that large offensive line? Miami has 2 NFL tackles. And on the other side, what does Ruben Bain do in this game? Does he force a couple turnovers and make life difficult for USF? That said, it's hard not to believe that they can at least hang around, and a respectable showing keeps them at the top of that kind of G5, G6 playoff race. Tulane has a tremendous opportunity as well against Duke this weekend in the Darien Mensa Bowl to be that other team. So keep an eye on both of those schools this weekend.
Haynes King will play for Georgia Tech this week as they host Clemson. And I think that the odds makers now are at the point, I know it's early in the season, Bill, but they have to say, hey, look, the Tigers got to show us something here before we're going to make them a touchdown favorite over anyone. I mean, they did not play well at all last week. Georgia Tech's okay. I don't think they're great, but it's an early start time, 12 o'clock Eastern. Clemson on the road ranked 12th against Georgia Tech. Generally speaking, in terms of betting, when you have an unranked team going to play a ranked team and the unranked team is favored at home, the hit percentage is incredible. But Georgia Tech is an underdog here. Do you think they pull this one out?
I'm going to go with Clemson. I think that line has dropped enough, and Clemson 3 yards per carry on defense. If Clemson runs the ball, and with Haynes King being a little banged up, I love how tough he is. I just think it's a tough assignment. I get it's an all-in game for Georgia Tech, but I'm going to go Clemson by that touchdown.
All right, Bill, enjoy the games this weekend. We'll catch up again next week.
No problem, Craig. Thank you.
Bill Bender, Sporting News. Congrats to Bill and his Ohio team for winning last week. Great stuff there. All right, coming up next, SportsGrid Sound Off. Don't go away.
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino, but playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour, but online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
There's a little bit of a kerfluffle earlier today when there's an exception taken to a putt that wasn't given, and just the reactions were pretty unilateral from both sides of like, hey, that's not behavior that we're going to tolerate at this type of competition.
Can you talk to me about kerfluffle again? Can you run that word back? I've never heard that word before.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Who wants to go to Chicago in February for a Super Bowl? Hey, the NFL can host outdoor parties on Lake Michigan. Stop the madness at this point. But now I take a look at the Denver Broncos. Always fun in the Mile High City. Why? Because what a home field advantage. It's at elevation. It's going to be cold. It might snow, and Denver's going to have that advantage. You know what Denver goes? We're going to build a world-class facility that's going to be a dome.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Before we get to the SportsGrid Sound Off, going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to preview here on the show today. Broncos and Colts, Chargers and Raiders. And then, of course, hey, we're previewing the Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and Eagles. We'll hear from Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, and, of course, Patrick Mahomes. A very rare season where Mahomes is sitting on the doorstep of a potential 0-2. Time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, so let's kind of think about this for a minute. When was the last time the Kansas City Chiefs lost 2 games in a row? They lost in the Super Bowl, and they lost in Week 1. Now, how about this? When was the last time the Chiefs lost 3 games in a row, because that's what's sitting in front of them right now. If you go back to, of course, last season when they lost in the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. It has not been a great showing, especially on offense, all of last season for Kansas City. We'll see if that is turned around this week. Here's Patrick Mahomes on the opportunity to get a little revenge on their Super Bowl defeat.
No, I think guys understand. I don't know if you can pinpoint one reason or another. At the end of the day, that's in the past now. It's how can you just learn from it and be better the next time. And so we will have that mindset going into practice this week, try to prepare ourselves to play a good football team. And what better challenge than playing the reigning Super Bowl champions to see where we're at. And so I think guys will be ready to go, and knowing that we all got to play our best if we want to find a way to win.
Matt, Patrick, you played a few of these Super Bowl rematches now. How are they different, than a regular game, especially playing one this early in the season?
I think you know the opponent. Even with the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl before and the games we've played in the regular seasons, we know that this is a really good football team, and we know that they have a lot of great football players. And so when you play the best of the best, you have to take your game to another level. And so it's not different in a sense of it's a Super Bowl rematch or anything like that. I think it's just different in the sense as you're playing the best of the best. And so how are you going to respond? How are you going to be even better and take your game to another level? And so I always think it's fun, playing the best and getting to see where you're at.
Speaking, how many you seen like this?
I think if you're playing your first game at Arrowhead against the reigning Super Bowl champions, there's got to be some extra juice. I mean, it's our first home game. I'm sure it'll be a cool flyover. You get everything you need, so there's no reason you should come out flat this game.
Also this weekend, it is a rematch in the coaching realm, as Pete Carroll, once upon a time the coach of the Seahawks, and Jim Harbaugh, once upon a time the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. They've had some great battles through the years, but this week it is Chargers versus Raiders. It doesn't seem like Pete Carroll really wanted to get into the past matchups.
History with Jim has been a fun rivalry to watch, but it's always been respectful. I'm not trying to make it into anything that's not. But what's your fondest memory of this rivalry with Jim Harbaugh?
I remember Jim. No, I don't. I have no fond memories. I'm not going to go there. They're great games. They've been great games. That's all.
He said that
there's been a bunch of them.
That you guys in different lives could have been great teammates. When he says something like that, what is that?
Well, I think that would come from the. He's seen my game, and so he would like me to help him win. If I could, and so he'd like us to play together, I guess. But one thing we would certainly see eye to eye on is about competing. He's always been a great competitor, and he battled through so much in his playing days and in his coaching days as well. So I appreciate him saying that because I'd like to play with him too.
All right. Meanwhile, Sean Payton would appreciate a better performance from his team. This past week, the Denver Broncos took on the Tennessee Titans. It did not go particularly well for the Broncos, but they ended up closing it out in the end. A lot to learn from as they head into this week's game against the Indianapolis Colts.
Look, I don't know how many games I've called, but that's one of those where, it came away from it like, man, I've got to be a lot better. And, it was one of those games, especially early. And so in that self-check, in that process, and the day after, if you will, if you're not careful, sometimes the game can be over and you're on to the next opponent and you haven't really, you've heard me use that term, debriefed properly. And we're really trying to pay attention to that so that regardless of the outcome, this accelerated curve that everyone's on, where everyone's in a race here these first 4 weeks, and we've got to be leading the way. And so in all areas.
I think right now that game and a couple of others on the schedule will be the underrated games of the week, Colts versus Broncos. If you want to learn more about all of the games this weekend and check out the lines, go against the spread, maybe even put your picks in, you can track them on the SportsGrid app. Just download it. It's available for iOS and Android. Take out your phone, scan that QR code, and we're not asking you to pay a thing. I know most QR codes want something from you. We want nothing. Just download the app, watch the show for free. Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report is up next.
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino. But playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour. But online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
There's a little bit of a kerfluffle earlier today when there's an exception taken to a putt that wasn't given, and just the reactions were pretty unilateral from both sides of like, hey, that's not behavior that we're going to tolerate at this type of competition.
Can you talk to me about kerfluffle again? Can you run that word back? I've never heard that word before.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Who wants to go to Chicago in February for a Super Bowl? Hey, the NFL can host outdoor parties on Lake Michigan. Stop the madness at this point. But now I take a look at the Denver Broncos. Always fun in the Mile High City. Why? Because what a home field advantage. It's at elevation. It's going to be cold. It might snow, and Denver's going to have that advantage. You know what Denver goes? We're going to build a world-class facility that's going to be a dome.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's bring in Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report to go over the very latest in sports betting, and we'll get into the prediction market here a little bit. But first, Sam, let's talk about the growth of sports betting, which we've seen since legalized every single college and pro football season. People running to their phones, downloading the apps, DraftKings, FanDuel, Bet365, everybody else, MGM. I don't want to leave anybody out. But for the first time in a while, Sam, no legalization of any new state. We'll have to wait till December. So what does that mean for downloads?
Yeah, you hit on it, Craig. This is the first week one of NFL and college football where downloads were actually down from last year, except for Fanatics and Bet365. So every single sports betting app, not named Fanatics or Bet365 combined, their downloads were down 10% from last year. Fanatics and Bet365 are newer entrants in the space. Bet365 has launched in about 4 new states since the start of last NFL season. So they're working from a smaller pool to compare to. And Fanatics similarly has launched in a bunch of new states and has put a lot of promo dollars out there. So even an app like FanDuel was down in downloads about 29%, but still led the entire sports betting universe in app downloads versus everyone else. So that should go to show you how dominant they've been here. But yeah, it's, you only have 50 states that can legalize sports betting. So this is a number that's steadily declined kind of every year. Only so many people turn 21 in the time between last football season and the start of football season. So what it means for the operators is they're allowed to, acquire people at more efficient costs. They're focusing, you're not working from a base where you have everyone rushing to a new state to kind of compete for the same customers. They can kind of focus on squeezing more revenue out of their customers, reactivating old customers. And like you alluded to, Craig, we do have Missouri on the horizon in December, the only state that's going to launch during football season. That'll be about the 39th state, 39th new market with sports betting. So I imagine, because they've had no other states to really compete for at this point, that'll be so much more important to them at that time to really come in and acquire customers pretty much at a later stage in the sports betting game where you have a bunch of states have already turned on as well. But yeah, definitely, this is the first time ever we've seen the app downloads down year over year. Usually they're up a percentage. So very interesting, down 10%. And we'll see if Fanatics and Bet365 can build on their momentum going forward.
Yeah, and look, a long way to go here. December is around the corner, so we'll see what happens. All right, let's get to prediction markets here. That's been the hot story of the year. These different operators that have launched sports betting. They call it not sports betting. But to me, I'm just going to call it what it is at this point. I mean, you can get the money line on games or predict the money line on games. It's closer to sports betting than anything that I've seen that's not called sports betting. I don't know what to say about it, but is this what's in the future here, Sam? Because if they're not going to stop this and let hundreds of millions of dollars get exchanged on these apps and websites, it feels like we're going to see a lot more of this in the future.
Yeah, most Americans sure seem to agree with you, Craig. There was this survey that the American Gaming Association put out this week where it polled U.S. voters, and it found that 84% of respondents agreed with you. They said, this looks like sports betting, so it should be regulated as sports betting. Ahead of football season, you have these companies redesign their entire interface to have, the 6-box spread where you have, the spread, the money line, and the over-under for each game, where it looks almost exactly like a sports book, although they say for regulatory purposes that it's not. It's been able to allow them to be in states like California, states like Texas, where there is no legal sports betting. So the poll saying that most people think that it should be regulated the same way as sports betting. Of course, these prediction markets like Kalshi, Robinhood, Crypto.com now, Polymarket sued. They say that they shouldn't be regulated as sports betting, and they're instead financial instruments that should be regulated by the CFTC. Now, the CFTC has not done anything. They were supposed to do a roundtable earlier this year to address the issue. There has been a commissioner nominated to take over from the last administration who actually has ties to Kalshi and other prediction markets. He hasn't been confirmed yet. They've basically done nothing in this space, so we're kind of in limbo. Meanwhile, a bunch of states have sued to stop it, saying that, hey, this is sports betting. We need to be the ones who regulate it. The judges so far have said, it should be decided by the federal government, who says that they're the ones who figured this thing out. So obviously the federal government hasn't done anything yet. And meanwhile, these sports prediction markets continue to just expand with how much money they take. You had $300 million was traded on Kalshi over this past weekend, the first weekend of college football and NFL, which was its biggest day in the platform's history since the election in 2024, and its third biggest day of all time. They've continued to pump in money and investors and bring in people from the sports betting industry to expand it and make it even bigger. And in the meantime, you have companies like FanDuel, DraftKings, Underdog, all positioning themselves to launch prediction markets sometime in the future. So it seems like that, if anything, gives us a signal that they don't think that this is going to be cracked down on. And we very much could be talking just in a couple months, a scenario where you have betting on DraftKings and FanDuel pretty much legal in all 50 states, even though they haven't legalized it. So it certainly is quite a mess. And, football season brings the most money. So we're only going to see more focus on it as we go forward.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It feels a little bit, I don't know if I'm right or wrong on this one, but the prediction markets feel a little bit, Sam, like when the Hard Rock Sportsbook launched in Florida without any regulation at all. Then it got shut down, and then it came back up for good. So that kind of leads me to my next story, which is about Hard Rock, where Genius Sports and the Hard Rock have paired up for another partnership. Tell us more.
Yeah, on that last front, I'll just say it seems to kind of be the strategy of sports betting these days, or not sports betting, to shoot first, ask questions later. Better to ask for forgiveness than ask if we can do this. Hard Rock, meanwhile, they are the only game in town in Florida, so it's pretty big news. I know you're down there, Craig, that they're going to add new live betting and streaming features in their app, and that's through a partnership they announced this week with Genius Sports, which is the official data provider of the NFL. This is a sports betting technology and data company that works with sports books like FanDuel, BetMGM, DraftKings, pretty much all the major players in the space, where you can now go in an app and have this thing called Watch and Bet, where you can watch the game. Oftentimes it'll be on a faster latency or a lower latency than the actual broadcast, and you can bet in the app, and they'll show you statistics to try to make you facilitate live betting more. And it's all been peddled as features that will be good for the customer and allow the customers to be more engaged. So Hard Rock now joining in with this partnership. They'll have access to Genius Sports suite of live betting features, not just for the NFL, but they'll have Bet Vision features as well for sports like international soccer and a host of other events that Genius Sports has the rights to. So in my mind, this was Hard Rock kind of finally joining in, or trying to get into the same spot as these other competitors that have had this feature for a long time. And pretty much you're going to have kind of the same thing on every sports book at this point. So the question to me now is, how do those sports books who have been doing this longer, been doing it first, how do they differentiate themselves? How do they make their product better? We know live betting has been a major focus for sports books like DraftKings this NFL season. It's pretty much centered around their entire game plan. So now that you have competitors pretty much doing the same thing here with this partnership Hard Rock has just done, it'll be interesting to see how that forces the rest of the market to make their features even better. And hopefully at the end of the day, that just rolls into a better experience overall for the better, certainly in Florida, but elsewhere in other states where you have more options as well.
Definitely the case. And Sam, kind of going back to, we were talking about the prediction markets before. I mean, is it just possible that these things just all launch all over the country and that's it? And with no pushback whatsoever? And how can they, I mean, it's great for them, I get it, but how could they get away with this, not having to pay the same taxes of the other companies? And how can FanDuel and DraftKings just decide to get on board with this and not push back either?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's definitely possible it could happen. Whether it will be allowed to happen forever, I don't think that's the case. I think, whether it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, there's legal action, there's lawsuits coming in. People have a real vested interest to want to get the taxes. That was one of the main reasons, the arguments for states being able to legalize sports betting in the first place, so they could benefit from it. And this just circumvents that whole thing. So it definitely could happen, but there would then be some big, hard regulation coming, at least in my mind.
We'll see. Sam, have a great weekend. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. You too, Craig.
Coming up next, Josh Graham weighs in on some of the big games in college football this weekend and also takes a look around his state where there's a number of big teams playing. Watching NewsWire on SportsGrid.
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino. But playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour. But online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Oh, Johnny, then you don't believe in face recognition, do you? Because I can assure you. Oh, yes, they do. They absolutely do. They will find that guy in a heartbeat. And by the way, why would you want to go to Vegas? You want to talk about facial red? They won't let you step in a casino. They won't let you step anywhere in
The
there.
Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There's a little bit of a kerfluffle earlier today when there's an exception taken to a putt that wasn't given, and just the reactions were pretty unilateral from both sides of like, hey, that's not behavior that we're going to tolerate at this type of competition.
Can you talk to me about kerfluffle again? Can you run that word back? I've never heard that word before.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Great to have Josh Graham with us back on the show once again to go over a lot of the big games in college football, including his home state of North Carolina. And Josh, great to have you back here on NewsWire. And so quite the showdown last night between NC State and Wake Forest. I guess, a lot of folks are watching the NFL, let's be honest, on Thursday night. But before the NFL began, if you didn't, tune back out, you saw Wake up 14-0. You're like, wow, okay, maybe this is going to be a game. How did North Carolina or State come all the way back and not only win this game, but cover the line?
It's a testament to Dave Doran, who is now 3-0 in his 13th season with NC State. And as you mentioned, overcoming a 14-0 deficit, this is a team that's been in some dogfights. The first two games, they faced ECU and Virginia and needed some defensive stands inside the red zone, leading by a small margin in order to hold on. And for those who don't understand it in our state, this rivalry hasn't been kind to NC State. This century, NC State had only won 3 times in Winston-Salem. So it's been a house of horrors. I was at the game last night. I asked Dave Doran about coming out of there a winner, and he quoted Bull Durham. I just love winning, man. Why? Because it's a lot better than losing, is what he told me after the game. And another thing is, it's a really cool rivalry that was put on display. 116 years, Craig, NC State and Wake Forest playing each other. It is the second longest uninterrupted rivalry in college football. The only one ahead of it is Wisconsin and Minnesota, the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe, which has been played every year since 1907. So a little bit of history. It was a fun game.
Got it.
Rivalries make college sports fun, and last night was no exception.
Yeah, I would agree. All right. And also CJ Bailey with a nice game, 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, 23 of 32 passing the ball. All right. So Josh was on our show a few weeks ago. He shared some skepticism at the University of North Carolina, and he was right. Because they don't look right, but they're laying 21.5 this week. If this is a good team, Josh, going into this game at home against Richmond, this line is 40. So it's telling you something, I think. Total of 46.5. Fighting Belichick's. They got to get it going this week. They got to win and look good, or there's going to be panicking already. We're not even, a month in?
Yeah, it's very weird, Craig. When you look at their schedule, they were outmatched against TCU, and then they're just the better football team against Charlotte. That's another game that I watched up close, and you could just tell there was a mismatch in talent, and there should be when North Carolina's playing Charlotte, with all due respect. Obviously, the same's true when you're playing FCS Richmond. And following this week going to UCF, North Carolina should be better than them as well. And then you have the bye week before Clemson comes in. And Bill Belichick said something interesting last week. That's not something that you say very often, or at least not when he's with the Patriots. Maybe this is a new Bill where he says a lot of interesting things. He said that in New England, in the NFL, it took about 30% of the season before a team found its identity. And he hoped that probably stayed true with college, which would make sense with North Carolina's schedule. Hey, you have these 4 games, the one that, again, you're outmatched, and then 3 that are pretty manageable before a bye and Clemson comes in. It does feel as if that Bill is handling this week, last week, and probably next week as well, almost as if it's preseason. Because what's strange, Craig, is they will do something very well in the run game, for example, and then the very next series, they'll go to somebody else. They won't be riding the hot hand. They'll be going to somebody else. It has this feel that since they don't have a lot of concern in the results playing a team like Richmond, that they're going to just try some things. So from a betting perspective, when you look at 21.5, I don't think Bill is thinking the way that most college coaches do, and the way that you just thought there. Oh, we got to look good and blow them out or whatever. I think he still views it as we're evaluating this roster, and that might mean the score isn't as lopsided as you think it is, even though the result isn't in doubt.
South Florida takes on Miami. South Florida deserves a ton of credit for their first 2 games. They're ranked inside the top 20. Odds makers are still saying it's a little bit fraudulent. They travel to Miami this week and play at Hard Rock Stadium. And that's a Saturday 4:30 p.m. Eastern game before the Dolphins play Sunday at 1 o'clock. So there's a big turnaround, a quick turnaround there. Wow. 56.5 is the total. So it tells me that there is some speculation that the Hurricanes offense could have their way with USF, but that's what we thought the last couple of weeks, and the Bulls came up big. What do you think happens this week?
I think Miami is going to score the way it's supposed to, in the mid to high 20s, maybe low 30s. I don't think they'll get higher than 38 unless it's a complete romp and USF starts to, wave the white flag and move things along, which they very well could. They still have the resume, non-conference wins. If you win the American, you probably do get that automatic bid into the playoff. The one thing that doesn't feel sustainable about what USF's done through the first 2 weeks, Craig, is this stat kind of blows me away. The average length of USF's scoring plays, their touchdowns so far this season, is over 40 yards per scoring play. I don't think when you play a defense that proved to be as stout as it was against top tier competition like Notre Dame, that Mario Cristobal and Miami are going to allow South Florida to have those types of splash plays. I think they're a more buttoned up operation than Florida was under Billy Napier. That doesn't mean that you diminish what South Florida's done at all. To your point, they've earned that, and they're going to be in the mix in this group of 6 conversation for a playoff bid. But Miami is a different level of talent. Miami is a legit bona fide top 5 team, and I do think this is when midnight strikes for Cinderella.
Okay. Will Clemson be able to strike at all this season? My gosh. I mean, they lose the first game. They're losing the second game. Odds makers are like, we're not making you 7 this week. 3.5-point favorites at Georgia Tech. Haynes King expected to play in this one. That's a big gain for him in the game. Can Georgia Tech upset Clemson?
They can. I wouldn't touch this game with a 39.5-foot pole because I don't know what you're getting with Clemson, and Georgia Tech is very capable. Remember the name, Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator of Georgia Tech. This is the guy that almost engineered a win against Georgia in Athens in that classic at the end of last year. This is a really well-coached team that does really well against nationally ranked teams under Brent Key. I think Georgia Tech, this line stinks, and I think there's a reason for that.
All right, not going to get involved in that one, but Josh, honest on it. Thanks again, Josh, for coming on. Enjoy the football this weekend. We'll talk soon. Thanks for coming on.
You too, Craig. Thanks so much.
We'll be right back and get the latest on the Kawhi Leonard situation in the front office.
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino. But playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour. But online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
There's a little bit of a kerfluffle earlier today when there's an exception taken to a putt that wasn't given, and just the reactions were pretty unilateral from both sides of like, hey, that's not behavior that we're going to tolerate at this type of competition.
Can you talk to me about kerfluffle again? Can you run that word back? I've never heard that word before.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Who wants to go to Chicago in February for a Super Bowl? Hey, the NFL can host outdoor parties on Lake Michigan. Stop the madness at this point. But now I take a look at the Denver Broncos. Always fun in the Mile High City. Why? Because what a home field advantage. It's at elevation. It's going to be cold. It might snow, and Denver's going to have that advantage. You know what Denver goes? We're going to build a world-class facility that's going to be a dome.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. One of the big stories in the NBA over the last couple of weeks has been the story reported by Pablo Torre of Pablo Torre Finds Out on Kawhi Leonard circumventing the salary cap via some payments from a company that's now defunct and had some investment from their owner in Steve Ballmer of the Los Angeles Clippers. Here's an update on the situation with our friends from Front Office Sports.
All right, let's bring in FOS reporter Alex Schiffer, who was at Adam Silver's press conference yesterday. So what did the commissioner say regarding the Clippers scandal here?
Yeah, he wants to let it play out in real time. He was not calling his shot or making any kind of prediction as to where this is going to go. He also said that the burden of proof is on the NBA to prove the Clippers circumvented the salary cap, which I think in a way almost takes the pressure off the Clippers and puts down the NBA to prove that this Kawhi Leonard aspiration situation was for that, which I thought was kind of telling, that he was almost like taking the heat off of Steve Ballmer in a little sense.
Yeah, we have heard, according to Pablo Torre, actually, that reported that one of Kawhi Leonard's payments from aspiration was late, and then the Clippers co-owner did invest $1.99 million, and suddenly Kawhi got paid. What else are we finding out? Pablo Torre's got a lot, but it seems like there's other, little drops here and there of information we're getting that just is showing there's more to this story.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Pablo's initial report said he found nothing on social media. Then some internet sleuth dug up that Clippers aspiration tweet for Kawhi's birthday. Then there was the Boston Sports Journal report about Kawhi Leonard having stock in aspiration that took that deal up to almost $50 million. So it's been interesting the way this has come out in bits and droves and whatnot, but this morning's reporting from Pablo basically said he has documents that have Dennis Wong investing in in aspiration shortly before Kawhi Leonard got another payment from them, which again, I think the talk of smoking gun during this whole thing I feel like we keep moving the field goal posts, and that is more damning of the Clippers, but we do not have anything that has at least been released to the public yet that is like a email of, hey, aspiration, this is Steve Ballmer. I'm about to Venmo you $50 million. Please use this money to pay Kawhi Leonard. We don't have anything like that yet. So that while this pushes closer to something more definitive, I think that it's still worth noting that we still don't have anything that says A to B to C, this is why this happened. And that is important in terms of the NBA and how they're going to go about this.
And it's also important when you look at the CBA, because there's been mention around the fines that potentially Ballmer could face, but also the fact that Adam Silver is not the lone final decision on what happens. There is a third party that also is involved in the punishment. So realistically, what could the NBA even do with these findings?
Yeah, it's interesting. And to your point on the CBA, I think a lot of people, and this was even a talk amongst us reporters before Adam Silver sat down yesterday, was that we didn't do our due diligence when this first came out of looking over the entire parts of the CBA and how it relates to cap circumvention, because to your point, Renee, Adam Silver said himself he has very broad power in what he can do here, whether it be financial penalties or draft picks. Steve Ballmer is one of the richest owners in all of sports and in the United States. I don't know how much you can fine him, where he's going to feel it in his wallet. But the CBA allows for the Clippers to be punished through circumstantial evidence, which I think there's a lot of right now. But Adam Silver didn't outright say he doesn't want to do that, but it seems not to be his preference. But then to your point also, this could go to an arbitrator where, the NBA has to kind of prove this is what happened and this is what we found. So I think that a lot of people are sort of playing judge and jury right now, saying, like, look at everything they have, like, this is it. But the CBA, there's a lot more entanglements that, to your point, drag this process out and in some ways with the arbitrator take the power to punish out of the NBA's hands. And I think the NBA also is trying to avoid a lawsuit here in case they are wrong on this. And I think that was kind of Adam Silver's point yesterday, was that this has only happened one other time in 25 years, which is the Timberwolves with Joe Smith. We do not see investigations like this a lot. And if we're going to throw the hammer down, we want the T's crossed and the I's dotted. And I think that's why this is going to play out over months and maybe not days or weeks the way some people are acting.
We have about a minute left with you. Adam Silver addressed other topics outside of the Clippers as well. Anything else newsworthy come from his press conference?
The no news on domestic expansion to me just is interesting because I continue to kind of see domestic expansion versus international expansion. It's almost like NBA Europe is facing off against the rebirth of the Supersonics and a Vegas team. And I do think his comment was interesting about, there's market confusion with all these team valuations right now of what an expansion team price would look like. I hear him, but also it's just like the expansion bid price to me is higher than it was a year ago, and that's good for all the owners. So what we see first of domestic versus international, and when he drops more news about this NBA Europe League, I'm going to be very fascinated by. And teaser, it might be at Tuned In next week where he's talking.
Very good point. Yes, he will be speaking at the big event on 9/16.
Coming up next, Mike Blewett joins us from Pro Football Game Day. You're watching NewsWire on SportsGrid. We'll be right back.
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino, but playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour, but online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
There's a little bit of a kerfluffle earlier today when there's an exception taken to a putt that wasn't given, and just the reactions were pretty unilateral from both sides of like, hey, that's not behavior that we're going to tolerate at this type of competition.
Can you talk to me about kerfluffle again? Can you run that word back? I've never heard that word before.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Who wants to go to Chicago in February for a Super Bowl? Hey, the NFL can host outdoor parties on Lake Michigan. Stop the madness at this point. But now I take a look at the Denver Broncos. Always fun in the Mile High City. Why? Because what a home field advantage. It's at elevation. It's going to be cold. It might snow, and Denver's going to have that advantage. You know what Denver goes? We're going to build a world-class facility that's going to be a dome.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Coming up, it's National Football League Week 2. So here on SportsGrid, it's Pro Football Today, Week 2, starting at 1 o'clock Eastern on Sunday. And the host of that show is Mike Blewett, getting ready for another big football weekend as we bring Mike in to discuss the very latest in the National Football League. Mike, great to have you back here on NewsWire. What'd you think of last night? The Packers 2-0 appear to be a small list, I would say, of potential NFC Super Bowl contenders. They look fantastic. I understand that, they didn't play a perfect game and Washington didn't play their best game either, but this is a very formidable team, I believe, moving forward.
Feeling pretty good about Packers to the Super Bowl right now, Craig. So they were my representative from the NFC. I think it's kind of a jump ball between them and the Eagles. I think those are the two best teams, certainly have proven it in early days. We'll see if the Eagles can get another big victory on Sunday against the Chiefs. But Packers looking really good. I think a lot of good young players on defense, especially in the front seven. Edger and Cooper, obviously Micah Parsons shows his value last night. And I think Jaden Reed is a tough blow for the offense. But what's interesting about this team is the multiple options that they have. Matthew Golden, their first-round draft pick, mainly ineffective last night, especially early on in the game. But Jordan Love has a lot of weapons at his disposal. I think with a group of young players like that, I think it's interesting that he is able to mix and match between those. Tucker Kraft has a good game last night when Jaden Reed goes out with an injury.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Kraft was a name that I just slept on in the preseason, Mike, completely. Yeah. I don't know why. Just saw his name on my board a million times. Didn't really think about it.
To be fair to you, Craig, I think it's for that very reason that I just mentioned. There are a few options there, and none of them has really asserted themselves as the alpha option, as it were. Josh Jacobs is clearly going to get a lot of touches, but how do you choose between Kraft and conceivably Reed, and when was Watson going to come back, and what role will Golden play? Those are difficult questions to answer without really knowing what it looks like with all of them out in the field. So you get a pass, I get a pass. I think a lot of us get a pass, and anybody patting themselves on the back for knowing that Kraft was going to be the 1A option, I think is a little full of themselves.
Yeah, Packers was my pick too here on NewsWire for the season, so we'll see if that ends up happening. By the way, a couple of injuries for Washington. Austin Eckler, we're waiting, but it does appear he'll miss a large chunk, if not the season, and even more. And also on an extra point, defensive end Dietrich Wise was injured. And looks like he's out for the season with a quad injury as well. So let's take a look real quick just at the Packers. and look at where things stand in terms of season win totals at 11.5 to win the North minus 155. May not even be a bad bet at this point there. To win the NFC, look at this. This has come all the way down from 6 to plus 370. And to win the Super Bowl, plus 750. So, Mike, I think you're in on that already with the NFC. You got a better number.
Yeah, I have my futures are really tying in the Packers, Eagles, Bills, Ravens, different combination of those, and I'm obviously willing to keep betting into that futures market. I think you can average out these bets and make sure that you have a lot of different plays. Even if the Chiefs are 0-2, it's not like they're dead in the water. They're the Chiefs. They're still going to rip off probably double-digit wins, and I think you have to continue to look at teams like the NFC West is pretty tricky, but I think you want to keep an eye on one of those teams as well. Do the Niners or the Rams emerge from there? Or are the Cardinals and the Seahawks a thorn in their side for the majority of the season?
Thought the Bears were going to beat the Vikings on Monday Night Football, and I was wrong. Vikings came all the way back to win that game. Someone, Mike, this week is not going to feel very good about themselves. A lot of folks were on the Bears, hopping on the win total, hopping on the chance to make the playoffs. They're 6.5-point underdogs this week against the Lions. The Lions did not look anything like the Lions of last season. I would not expect them to win, but hey, put up 20 or something like that. Total 47.5 in this game. Is this the get right Lions game, or are the Lions just not right?
I don't think this is a good spot for the Bears, to be honest. The Lions and Jared Goff, historically, I think this is a little bit forgotten because there was a good amount of hype going into that Packers-Lions game. It was somewhat forgotten that Jared Goff's numbers on the road aren't great. These outdoor games for him, even though it was a sunny day in September, these outdoor games for him are not his best venue. He's going to go back indoors where we'll see if they can get right, to your point. Now, it is worth noting again, and I'm sure you've mentioned it, I certainly have 1,000 times, the Lions lost 8 coaches during the offseason, including their offensive and defensive coordinator. It is a reason why I don't think they're going to get to the Super Bowl, as good as I think they still are. And does John Morton, their offensive coordinator, is he able to scheme them right back into a good game? I trust that he will. I think it's a good spot for them. The Bears are still pretty banged up in the secondary, so I think the Caleb Williams haters are going to have another week to celebrate. It won't necessarily be his fault, but the Bears are going to have to try to get after Jared Goff in a way that they may not be able to. And on the flip side, the Bears have to do a better job. You can blame Caleb all you want, and he's absolutely sailed a bunch of throws and didn't play well in the second half, but they have to protect him better. If the season looks the way it did in the second half of that game, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is, and people will think that Caleb is toast when it may not in reality be his fault.
Does it matter who the quarterback is this week in New Orleans? If you're ever going to have a game where you're missing your starter, the game you'd want would be against the Saints, because give them credit, they played okay last week, and they may play okay this week. We know at the end of the season, when it all shakes out, the Saints are only going to win a handful of games, but is this one of them? Mac Jones starts for the 49ers. The Saints are now +3 in this game, total of 40.5. Always dangerous to me going in to play the Saints in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Beyond that, I'm waiting for the Saints to get annihilated on the road. I know it's going to happen eventually, but what happens this week? I believe, Mike, am I right by saying Mac Jones was serviceable for Trevor Lawrence when he went down?
They won games. I don't know that it was because of the offense that Mac put out there. They beat the Titans at one point. I want to say that neither team got to 15 in that one. But what I would say here is that the Saints, nobody has high expectations for them. I thought Rattler actually played pretty well last week. But what they also didn't need, what the Saints also didn't need, was the start to this schedule. You have an Arizona defense and a Niners defense back-to-back, 2 NFC West teams that we both think are very competitive, and they are highly competitive on defense. So kind of thrown into the fire is Rattler here. I don't expect it to be a high-scoring game. I do think Mac can go down there and get the win, but the spread reflects that, right? This could be a tight game. This could be the Niners with, by the way, a new kicker going down to New Orleans and scraping one out 16-13 by the skin of their teeth. This is going to be a heavy dose of Christian McCaffrey. They have to rely on him, and they'll rely on a lot of ball control, passing attack. It's not that they don't do that with Purdy, but Purdy clearly has a better hand at running the offense than does Mac. We'll see how Mac can get it done, but I'm really leaning towards a lack of points here. I bet the Saints team total under last week. I'd look to that again, and the game total under, especially in the first half.
One more, Mike, before we break, then we'll come back and do the rest. Rams, 5.5-point favorites. The odds makers are telling us Tennessee's in big trouble. Cam Ward was just running for his life the entire game last week. It was just a horrible scene. Yet they somehow stayed involved in that game right up until the end, and then Denver finally took over. Plus 5.5 Tennessee this week. Do the Rams? Did they earn that though? Did the Rams earn 5.5 points on the road after playing last week against Houston? You tell me.
I think you laid out at the beginning of your comment, you laid out kind of what the recipe will be here. I think it's the Rams, young players, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, and others getting after the QB. Titans were another team where I bet their team total under. I think you're going to look to that again. I think he has to prove it. They shouldn't have him throwing so much, but the problem is they're not good enough to run it.
We'll be back with Mike and
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino. But playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour. But online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
There's a little bit of a kerfluffle earlier today when there's an exception taken to a punt that wasn't given, and just the reactions were pretty unilateral from both sides of like, hey, that's not behavior that we're going to tolerate at this type of competition.
Can you talk to me about kerfluffle again? Can you run that word back? I've never heard that word before.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Who wants to go to Chicago in February for a Super Bowl? Hey, the NFL can host outdoor parties on Lake Michigan. Stop the madness at this point. But now I take a look at the Denver Broncos. Always fun in the Mile High City. Why? Because what a home field advantage. It's at elevation. It's going to be cold. It might snow, and Denver's going to have that advantage. You know what Denver goes? We're going to build a world-class facility that's going to be a dome.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got Mike Blewett with us. You can catch him Sunday on Pro Football Today, 1 o'clock Eastern here on SportsGrid, take you through the first window of NFL games. And of course, that's 1 p.m. to just after 4 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you're tuned into the grid at that time. All right, Mike. So my other sneaky pick for the season is the next team that we're going to talk about. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I really am impressed with what I've seen thus far. I know they didn't go crazy this past week against Carolina. But I don't know. This line seems very iffy to me that the Bengals are only 3.5-point favorites over the Jaguars, total 49.5. I kind of feel like I'm back on the Jaguars this week. Kind of feel like they may beat the Bengals this week, Mike. I don't know. Like, the Bengals looked awful to me. I understand Cleveland's defense is good, but like, I mean, they should have lost that game 4 or 5 times this past week. I don't think that they've solved this early season stuff at all.
I think that's exactly right. So I think that's why we're seeing the line where it is. The Bengals played another horrendous game. And by the way, I had the displeasure of watching the entirety of that game, and there was no offense from the Bengals in the second half. It doesn't matter how good the Browns are. The Bengals have elite weapons at QB, at wide receiver. They have a good running back and a host of tight ends that can make catches. They weren't making any plays at all. We bet the Joe Burrow passing yardage number over live because it went under 200 and he couldn't even get there at 20 yards passing, I think, in the second half. So I need to see a little bit more from the Jags. Obviously, I don't share quite your optimism, but I understand the path to it. Etienne looked unbelievable on Sunday. Obviously, they traded Tank Bigsby, and Tootin will be the backup there now for Etienne. But really good weapons. Brian Thomas Jr., I think I, like you, as a football fan, not because I'm a Jags fan, would love to see Trevor Lawrence unlocked in a way that he hasn't been able to do consistently yet in his career. Is Liam Cohen the guy to do that? That would be fantastic to watch. And who wouldn't want a quarterback battle this Sunday between Burrow and Lawrence? The Bengals, unfortunately, they need to figure out something about this early season swoon. The fact that it happens on offense, Craig, is the most perplexing thing. We'll see if the Jaguars defense can step up here, but I understand taking the points here. I'm going to look at some point totals here, though. The Bengals disappointed me in week 1, but I'm going to look to bounce back with them and look at some Bengals point totals maybe in the first half.
All right, we'll see. It should be a competitive game if the spread would indicate that. Okay, so what I said, how I talk about the Browns, Mike, here is that I think that because Joe Flacco being the quarterback will have them competitive. But as you know, there are going to be games this season where they're going to get absolutely hammered and lose like 50-0. I don't know that this is one of them. I know it's coming, though, because when they get after Flacco and he's on his back, it's over. I'm not sure that Baltimore laying 11.5 is too many points, and the total is 45.5. But there will be games this season where teams will be laying a big number against Cleveland, and they're going to cover. Is this one of them?
I think that the Ravens at 28.5 points point total is absolutely something I'm looking at. And Ravens first half point total over 14.5 is where I'll be. I think what happened to the Ravens, unfortunately, has become a little bit of a scary repeat performance in blowing these games late. But early fourth quarter, you and I and most of the people in the country were saying this might be a Super Bowl team. They put 40 up on the road on the Bills, who may not be a top 5 defense, but they are the Bills. Miraculous comeback by the Bills notwithstanding. The Ravens are one of the best teams in the league and certainly a very explosive offense. I would look for them to get back after it on the scoring side. And I think this is just a bad week to be the Browns. You don't want to see the Ravens firing out of the blocks after having lost a somewhat historic blown lead to the Bills late.
Yeah, I agree. I can't back Cleveland here. All right, so I'm wondering about how you feel about this game. Your Steelers, what a great win at New York last week. Exciting game to the finish. The odds makers are like, not so fast. Steelers -3 against Seattle. Like everything working against Seattle here. But Mike, I'm a little nervous for your guys here. Total 39.5. Like this is one of those games where I'd feel so much better if it was Steelers -4.5, but the line is 3. I don't know. I know what you're rooting for here, but do you think the Steelers win and cover this number?
I think that these interconference games early in the year are some of the toughest ones to pick. We have a few of them this week. And what I said last week about the Steelers is probably true again. The Steelers have a tendency to play down to competition and play close games that shouldn't otherwise be close. I'm not denigrating the Seahawks in any way, but they didn't put many points on the board last week. They obviously blew the game late on an unlucky fumble by Darnold. If the Steelers can put up offense like they did last week consistently, they're really going to be a dangerous playoff team. But I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. I do like them to win here, but I think this one is a sweat the whole way. I think you can get live lines on the Steelers where they'll be the underdog at some point. So this is the type of game I would say lay in the cut and wait for the Steelers maybe to get down early. I think you'll get better odds than having to lay 3 here, just like you did last week during the Jets game.
I guess I'm going to be wrong taking the Jets this week because I don't get this line at all. You're giving me 6.5 points with the Jets at home against the Bills and that emotional win. Oh my gosh, everything points to me toward taking the points. Total of 46.5. I mean, I know the Jets lost. They got to be feeling really good about the way that they looked last week. And Buffalo's defense looks brutal. I don't know. I'm going to ride the Jets here. I don't know that they'll win the game, but 0-1, feeling okay. Kind of feel like this game's got to be closer than, and they always do play these wacky close games, don't they?
But 1-0 against the number, Craig. Let's ride the Jets high. Let's bet the Jets with the number for as long as we can, and maybe we'll go 2-0 this week. So nearly a touchdown. I really like the way Justin Fields played. Hopefully we can get a repeat performance there. There's certain guys that you, even though you're not a fan of that team or that player, you kind of hope that he has a second or third act here that's positive.
I thought they looked really good in a loss. All right, Mike, great to see you. Thanks again. Have a good show this weekend.
Appreciate it.
We'll be right back with Last Lick.
Remember these names: AZ Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes one. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with obviously Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
So game one, I already made a mistake. I put my touchdown prop bets in hours ago. When you and I started talking before kickoff, I got so excited and I bet him again without even thinking that I already did it.
I
was like, Jalen Hurts. I was like, and then I was like, wait, I think I already did this. And I scrolled down. I was like, yeah, you already did do this. And I was like, that's okay. That's okay.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
I'd give them no excuses for the mistakes that Lamar and that team made when they played Buffalo in the playoffs last year. But I do think they've done enough to improve the team in the offseason. I think the offense was way better. The defensive line and the offensive line played really well in the back half of the year last year. Almost all of that talent is back. And I think the Ravens are going to be right there.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
To your point, Greg, if anybody else is able to make a dent, it'll have to happen now. ESPN has had about 3% market share. Their goal is to get to 10% by next year. So if they can't make a big push this year and really see a lot of the new features that they put on their apps, a lot of the integrations with ESPN fantasy products, with ESPN, flagship products across the board, if those don't pay off soon this football season, it might be curtains for them.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Don't forget, you can catch me later today on Fantasy Sports Today as we go over the entire NFL slate coming up this weekend. Make sure you catch us. That's me and George Kurtz getting you ready for the big fantasy football weekend. In addition, we'll wrap up the show with a little bit of a food truck story here in Wake Forest, in case you missed this one yesterday. A big fight over the weekend, and also a little hot mic action going on at the tournament right now that's going on for the PGA Tour. It's time now for some last licks. All right, so you don't see this that often, but Sky Sports, boy, they've had their work cut out for them over the last 24 hours. So Robert McIntyre, who's on the PGA Tour and arguably a very good golfer, is playing out there. And now they are, I believe, in their second day playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sky Sports is broadcasting this live. And McIntyre made a bad shot. And so, like a lot of us do when we struggle playing golf, something will come off the tip of our tongue. So McIntyre, of course, dropped, I believe, an F-bomb, if I'm not mistaken, without getting into... I actually could say that here on the air, but I'm not going to do it. Well, the broadcasters said, well, we're really sorry for that. We're sorry that it went over the air, but, we'll do our best next time to make sure that you don't have to hear that. Okay. So McIntyre, later in the round, is playing. They go back to McIntyre. He misses a putt. Drops another one on the air. Oh, my gosh. Broadcasters, very funnily on Sky Sports, again, had to apologize. Now, you see this happen often, but I don't know that you see this twice in like the same round from the same guy. Maybe here's just a hot tip for anybody that's broadcasting Robert McIntyre's round. Maybe just don't go live audio when he's playing. So a double F-bomb dropped, double apology dropped. Don't see that often on the PGA Tour. That's what happened yesterday. Okay, so Wake Forest starts off the game against North Carolina State last night. I was watching this before I was going to flip over to Washington Green Bay. I was stunned to see the Demon Deacons off to a 14-0 lead. But those of you who were watching the game may have noticed something a little bit different. Outside of the stadium where Wake Forest plays, there was a fire and smoke just pouring in from right outside. It got a lot of the fans and a lot of people nervous. But as it turns out, there was really no need to be nervous. But the only issue is that there's this guy who had a food truck out there, and the thing was just bleeping fire. Like, it's just crazy. And you could see in the video what he had to do is he had to actually get out the fire extinguisher. And unfortunately, this poor guy who was just trying to make a buck, great spot right outside the stadium, ended up going up in flames. And by the way, from that point forward, 14-0, NC State came all the way back. No pun intended. 2 puns on the show to smoke the Demon Deacons as they went on to win the game. I'm a big food truck guy, big fan of that. Hate to see this happen to somebody, but I don't know what happened. It's just this thing was just on fire. Okay, so we don't, unfortunately, because boxing is a shell of what it used to be, don't talk a lot of boxing on our show. It's just true. In fact, Frank, our producer here, completely unaware that this fight is going off tomorrow night. Talked about it. And no offense to him. I don't blame him. Probably not going to be watching. He's got the Yankees to watch, got football to watch too. So Canelo Alvarez is fighting, and here is my 1-minute preview of the show. Canelo Alvarez, who is arguably one of the best in his division, has a chance to lose tomorrow, which is rare. Pretty much every fight that he goes into, he's minus 250, 300. He's fighting Terrence Crawford tomorrow night. It is one of the very few boxing matches that we're going to see streamed. Guess who's involved again? On Netflix. So that's where you can watch the fight tomorrow night. Crawford to win the fight is plus 142. Canelo Alvarez on the money line is minus 182. Unfortunately, this may be the last boxing that we mention here on NewsWire for a while, but I thought we would at least end the show with that because I do think it has the promise, which I don't say very often, of actually being a good boxing match involving 2 actual boxers too, tomorrow night on Netflix. That'll do it for our show today. Thanks to all our guests here on the show, which will include Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report, Josh Graham, of course, of the Josh Graham Show, also Mike Blewett, and you can catch Mike Sunday afternoon on Pro Football Today, and also thanks to all of our other guests here on the show, which include Bill Bender from Sporting News. Our director is Luke. My producer is Frank. I'm Craig Mish. I'll see you back here for our next edition of NewsWire on Monday. Who is that? That's me? Is that supposed to be me? That's a surprise. What was that? Put that back up there. Is that how I look on TV? That doesn't look like me. Does it look like me? I mean, the jacket looks good. Can you do side by side? Can we put a side by side? No? Can you make the mouth move a little bit? That's a surprise. I'm 50-50.